right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the year 2022. We did this prediction session last year in 2021 with Julian. And this year, I'm thrilled to welcome Sasha, one of our incredible architects. And he's going to share a little bit about the tech predictions and what he sees in the year 2022. So I know we had a pretty long discussion last year on different languages and the histories of things and where they fit in. I think this year we are very excited to see what's coming. And I am going to make a bold statement and say that I don't think that we're going to see a heck of a lot of language-specific coding language preferences in the new year, but that we are going to start jumping in with some really intense rapid development and a demand for really fast-paced delivery in our development spaces. But let's hand it over to the experts. I want to know from you, Sasha, what do you think is going to happen in this year?
So before I kick that off, I have a bombshell. So I think we should maybe go with your prediction. First of all,
Okay.
thank you kindly for that introduction. And yeah, I'm really excited to do this prediction with you. But I do want to ask you, what do you think? What is your bold prediction for the year 2022?
Bold predictions. AI is going to be here no matter what we do about it. It's not going anywhere. NFTs are going to be even more popular than they are already, and we're going to start using NFTs for other things. I think those are my bold predictions in terms of generic code, but I also think not too much is going to change in terms of what we've seen so far. So I don't know how bold that is.
Yeah, playing it safe, sitting on the fence. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think I think that the language for 2022 that everybody needs to learn that's going to change the landscape and going to be a game changer is brain.
I
So,
love that. Absolutely love it. But okay, help a girl out. What exactly do you use this for?
okay. So like let me walk you through my reasoning here
Okay.
before everybody runs away. So brain flip, and you can Google that with a different suffix, is one of these esoteric languages, one of these toy languages. There's a whole host of these things. There's a
Yes.
Shakespeare, for instance, where you write Shakespearean sonnets and it compiles
Yeah.
into a working code
Okay.
runtime. There's Rockstar, where you write
Mm-hmm.
80s plastic rock ballads and it compiles into a runtime. And BrainFlip just uses a limited number of special characters. So all
Okay.
your code is basically plus, 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 backslash, forward slash, dash. I don't remember the exact syntax.
Mm-hmm.
And its primary use is as a thought experiment, as a thought exercise for people to take technology a little bit less seriously, but also to
Mm-hmm.
expand their mind and to start thinking about what is possible? What haven't we explored? Why do we keep
Yeah.
going into the same spiral and talking about high level languages in exactly the same way all the time?
Mm-hmm.
How do we break out of this loop? And in terms of practical use, if you put that on your CV, if your CV has brain flip, I'm going to look at your CV. You're definitely getting your foot in the door with that on
Mm-hmm.
your CV. So it has a
Yeah.
practical use from that regard. The caveat being that you're going to make yourself a marked person, right? Because when you go into that interview, we're going to ask you some heavy you get yourself a target.
I love that though. I love the concept of making something creative. I know there's been a bunch of these as thought experiments of these sort of esoteric languages, and a lot of good has come out of it as well. If you think about it, Rust in its sense was an esoteric language back in the day and now actually has some practical applications. So maybe one day that's something. But maybe if you have that on your profile, it's also going to show like you're not the most serious person. You can take a joke and you take your code creatively. So
Quite
might
right.
might make
Quite.
some good impressions. So what would you ask someone in an interview if you saw that on a CV?
Well, you did mention Rust. I would ask them,
Yeah,
are you aware of any other like actual
yeah,
languages? So, I
mm,
mean, 2022 predictions,
yeah,
Rust and Go are going to continue to
yeah,
compete in the Internet of Things space,
yeah,
where there seems to be some kind of a 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other debate.
yeah,
It seems to me that Rust is more in that vein, coming from the background of
yeah,
C++, Objective-C kind of world, where there's like heavy decorative, macro kind of oriented
yeah,
approach to constructing the
mm,
solution,
yeah,
whereas Go is more from that CE raw procedural kind of space. And I think it depends on the
mm,
people's preference, which they want.
Yeah.
And the other comment on that is that Go is definitely dominant in the cloud space. So if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
looking for something in cloud, like that
Mm,
landscape is completely dominated by Go. So every single serverless, Kubernetes oriented architecture, blah, 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 that whole space,
mm,
all those technologies, all that
yeah.
infrastructure is supported by source code in Go.
Yeah.
So I don't know. My prediction is that that will continue in 2022.
Yeah, I completely agree, actually. And in terms of how we start thinking about architecture and our methodologies for architecture, obviously, this is something you deal with quite a lot. Do you think that we're going to start seeing some changes in the way that we design systems as we move into cloud? Is this going to change our fundamental beliefs about architecture, or what do you think?
Yes, it will fundamentally change everything. And Wayne is heading me right now. I mean, these discussions about 2022, in which like it
Yeah,
always permeates that like good practices, overall
yeah,
abstract patterns that apply to everything. So those things are not going away. They're never going away. Not in 2022, not in 2023, right?
yeah,
Um, However, that doesn't make for an interesting 2022
mm,
specific discussion. So like
yeah,
in terms of the cloud space,
mm,
um, what what we're seeing on a trend, this is not specific to 2022, and there's no reason to believe this will change, is that
yeah,
the cloud providers are starting to get democratized. So like, whereas there was
yeah,
one dominant player in that space,
mm,
and I think Google probably dropped the ball in that regard because they had a good opportunity to be that dominant player.
mm,
With the introduction of Microsoft's offering a
yeah,
lot more people, a lot more enterprises, specifically in our space, like where we deal with
yeah,
the solution space, um, we're seeing a lot more provider offerings. So um, a technology like Kubernetes has a great platform to allow big solutions to move across different providers. So
mm,
that's not
yeah,
something that's going to change. However,
mm,
there is a gap that nobody is exploiting yet. And my prediction of for 2022, somebody's going to create an open source project that's going to blow everything out the water, that's going to allow serverless microservice
mm,
solutions to be transferable between providers, because that is probably an interesting space for these kind of heavy
mm.
code for code's sake kind of programmers to go into and explore. Whether or not it yields something, my prediction says yes. So, and
Yeah,
what do you think about that? Like, do you think that it's going to
mm.
fundamentally change the cloud is fundamentally going to change their approach?
I don't know if it's as fundamental of a change, but I do think it's going to start challenging the way that we think about some things, especially because there is history to show that maybe we need to think about things differently. It's why we've moved into the space of microservices, right? We've realized that being in a monolithic sense isn't necessarily the safest option. I do think that that, along with a really big awareness of cybersecurity, means that we maybe are going to start thinking about designing our systems in a more secure fashion, which I know that is a big consideration for a lot of our banking and our corporate clients, but I think it's going to start permeating more and more throughout our day to day. So you are right, the foundations of good architecture and good design and those patterns always going to be there. It's what makes good software good, right? But maybe it is time for us to start thinking a bit more creatively. I love the concept of this being more democratized, and you are seeing more and more of it. It's interesting to also see that South Africa's preferences for our cloud providers is actually different to Europe. In Europe, we are seeing more of a dominance in different stacks and things like Google Cloud. But at the same token, someone like Huawei might be a big shock. And it would be really interesting to see if someone takes you up on that. Let's see how we can make all these big players talk together, right? The open API of cloud providers, if you will, might be interesting to see.
You,
So,
something very interesting there. So something
mm,
that perpetually in my blind spot, and that's security, because I never
yeah,
explored that space. And
yeah,
it seems that the industry is ripe for some kind of a solution that consolidates all these security concerns that are relevant to the banking space, the enterprise
yeah,
space, who do put a lot of
mm,
emphasis on this, but don't really seem to get anything out of it
yeah,
apart from technology. So there are
mm,
specific technologies designed to deal with monitoring and response and vulnerabilities and libraries, but there is no like fundamental pattern to that. It really is a
Yeah.
technology space where there is a license and a software or an application that
Mhm.
resolves a specific niche demand.
Yeah, exactly. And it's becoming more and more important as more and more of our information lives in the internet. So I'm very curious to see what's going to come through that. So maybe to wrap us up, if you are looking at someone's profile throughout this year and you see two things, what do you want to see on those profiles? So we've obviously got a brain flip with a different suffix that we're looking out for. What else do we want to see that would make you go, yeah, that's good?
So I would look for a strain of like, in terms of professional, like forced down a gauntlet to do Java or C Sharp or some mainstream enterprise technology, and then another technology outside of that. So whether that's Rust or whether that's Go or whether that's you're in the on-prem environment and you're trying out cloud, or you're on the cloud environment but you're trying something in mobile, something that stands out from your main core set of skills, right? Um, those two things, like one of them an esoteric language to show that you are curious about the technology space, makes you stand out a lot. And then anything outside of your core set of skills also makes you stand out.
I completely agree. Seeing that ability to go and explore and try out. Something that I have always recommended to people to go and explore is to really go in and test out and experiment with different things and actually demonstrate that. Having that ability to explain what you've learned and to show that you're always here to learn is fantastic. I always say if you want to stop learning, take us the wrong place for you because it's never going to stop. But I think this has been amazing. It's been so much fun, Sasha. Is there anything else you want to add in? Any bombshells we need to prep for before we wrap up?
No, I think we're done with the bombshells for this session, and I'm looking forward to many more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely touch base and maybe see in the middle of the year how our predictions have lined up and maybe start investing in whatever tool consolidates the cloud.
Quite, quite. Invest heavily, invest now. It'll be NFT, and it'll be blockchain. I guarantee it.
I agree with you. Alrighty. Thanks so much, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.